Hello. Today's topic is the Canada Convoy and maintaining the momentum of human evolution, right, for today's channel. The Canada Convoy and how it relates to maintaining the momentum of human evolution. All right. I'm in my new residence now. I've got a comfortable chair, soft plush chair, so I'm happy. I'm happy to be here. Okay, and that's kind of cool. See, like I've got like a halo there. That's kind of cool. Alrighty, and see what we got. Greetings and thank you for the topic. The Canadian Convoy and how this relates to maintaining the momentum of human evolution. Let us begin by saying that what you are seeing now is a expected phenomenon from our perspective, because humanity is transitioning from identity as an individual to identity as a unity, because there is an impending ascension from a third density reality into a fourth density reality. And in the third density, as humanity finds itself now, there is individualism, a sense of identity as the individual in the absence of awareness of connection to everything else, which is a unique presentation for sentient life in existence. Very, very unique. And this is something that we have discussed fully many times before, so we won't go into it in the same degree of specificity as we have in the past, other than to assist this dialogue. The transition into fourth density will bring with it an extra dimensional way in which humanity will exist. So at the moment, humanity exists in 4 dimensions, 3 of space, 1 of time. The additional dimension which humanity will exist in once the transition into fourth density is complete will be unity. So there will be 3 of space, 1 of time, and then 1 of unity. And this dimension of unity is literally having the self-identity as the unit, as the group, as the one being of many parts. And this one being of many parts will be the humanity being. So, in existence, the common presentation of sentient life is to be birthed into existence with already this 5th dimensional state, already identifying as the individual and as the group. It is the default mechanism and has been since the beginning. And the Earth human, as well as the kin of the Earth human, who also have evolved within the solar system, were created without this 5th dimension. And this created a very unique scenario where evolution of the sentient species now has an additional preceding step, because there is going to be a transition from the 4 dimensions into the 5th dimensions, from identifying solely as an individual to identifying as the individual and as the group. So, we make this point to illustrate that when you observe what is happening with the convoy and the coming together of many individuals, not only the drivers, but also those who are supporting, all of the families which are lining the sides of the freeways, who are putting together food packages, who are donating their money, who are offering legal support, and so on. You can see it is the formation of a unity that is unified around a single main objective. And this single main objective is to ensure that each individual is able to access their birthright. And their birthright includes being able to freely breathe the air, being able to travel to other places on the earth without the restriction of a medical passport, to be able to open one's business and be entrepreneurial, so that you can have the resources required to have a happy existence without struggle, strife, suffering. To have the autonomy to determine what goes into your body, and to have the freedom to say no when there is a push for you to integrate yourself with a technology or with a chemical cocktail. And this coming together is the beginnings of the unity of the humanity being, awakening and becoming self-realized through each of the individuals. So these individuals coming together fight for these birthrights, but not only for themselves. They fight for these birthrights for all other aspects of this group that are coming together. So they fight for themselves, and they fight for the people, the men, the women, the children, which they do not know, they will never know, yet they feel a passion to ensure that they also have access to this birthright. And this way of being is literally identifying as the group. The reason the individuals within the group are so passionate about others in the group that they shall never know and shall never receive any form of gratitude or win from their personal actions for them, is because they are beginning to identify the others as themselves. To identify as the group in this way is to be identified as a larger being, as a being which is the sum of many parts. This is the humanity being. So, you will see this more and more and more and more in this time, where the birthing of this unity is beginning to build momentum. So not only will you see this in the convoy, in the coming time, more and more you will see that these groups who come to declare they have sovereignty and they have entitlement to birthright will become larger and larger and larger groups. And these groups, as you can see, are now beginning to spread across nations. So these groups now are not only one small group or one largish group in one city having their unique demonstration, but there is now a coherency where it could be said that the group spans multiple nations, multiple continents. Going back to the convoy example, there is a convoy in Canada, but simultaneously there are convoys on other continents, other nations, at the same time. Not as a unique, separate, mutually exclusive phenomenon, but as the same phenomenon. This is the humanity being spreading in its self-awareness. Those that are pushing COVID, they understand that this coming together, this formation of the unity, is the end for them. They are very few in number, and they are no match for a unification of all of humanity into a single force. If this were to occur, their impotency would be revealed. And those within the unity would understand this world of control they have lived in was mostly smoke and mirrors. It was the illusion that conformity to the system of control was unavoidable, was a fact of life, was an inevitable part of being a human in the years that have preceded. But this is not the case. Humanity is far more powerful, or rather, the humanity being is far more powerful than those that become empowered through the splintering and the divisiveness of humanity, who have systematically, scientifically engineered division into the global population to prevent this coming together from occurring. Prior to the COVID pandemic, this phenomenon of coming together, the awakening of the humanity being through each individual, was gaining momentum because there were very large rallies all around the world that were, at the time, mutually exclusive. They were for different reasons. In some nations, it was a protest against the political system. In other nations, it was protests against the cost of living. In other nations, it was protests about the diminishment of freedoms, and so on. But even though at the time there was no unifying theme, what was thematic was the coming together. This phenomenon of individuals forming a unity. COVID was strategically released at that time to prevent this coming together, to stifle the momentum that those who are empowered through divisiveness, those who are aligned with the path of darkness, who follow a philosophical path of service to self, used the pandemic to create as much divisiveness and separation and splintering of humanity as possible. And if you recall, in the early days of the pandemic, there was the veto of entering public spaces, of going to areas where humans gather in groups, such as restaurants, gyms, other shops and establishments. There was also the masking, so there was much less communication through the facial expressions. There was the instilling of fear that even your own family members could be potential carriers of a microbe that will kill you. And so there was fear, even parents of their children, children of their parents, siblings of each other, partners of each other. So there was a state of maximum splintering, because this is the objective. Looking at it in a polaric sense, the path of light, the philosophical position of service to others, is unity, is coming together to form one, because ultimately there is only one, the one, all of existence across all galaxies is an illusory matrix of this one thing discovering what it is through experience. And so this philosophical path of light is a path of oneness, of unity, of service to others. And it is service to others oriented because when there is only one, then all others are you. Therefore, you serve others as an expression of service to self, because you are all the one being. And when you are unkind or unfair or cruel or any action which is motivated from the dark end of the spectrum, then you are doing that to other aspects of yourself. You are self-harming, which is acting without wisdom. To act with wisdom is to give only gestures and actions and emotions coming from the light end of the spectrum, love and its derivatives, to all other aspects of this one being which you are. Then you are wisely treating yourself with love and its derivatives. So, the other end of this polarity will be the opposite. It is the polar opposite. And the polar opposite at the dark end of the spectrum, where the emotional qualities are fear and its derivatives, is divisiveness, is separation, is splintering, is the philosophical path of service to self, where there is no identification as others being self. And as there is no feeling of connectedness, of unity, then these other aspects of this larger being which you deny you are a part of are meaningless to you. They are resources, are obstructions, are objects for your exploitation to elevate yourself in the physical illusion, the matrix. So to have power as an individual in this end of the spectrum, then the balance must be in this way, which means unity must be denied. There cannot be unity of those which are outside your small circle, who are conspiring to bring about a scenario where there is enrichment for each individual within the group, because it has been plundered from the larger, who are not part of this cult, of this secret society. And for a while, this strategy was very successful, because these large gatherings stopped on a dime, and there was this maximum degree of splintering because of the saturation of fear that even your mother could infect you with a disease that would kill you. But now this process has gone full circle, and this undeniable momentum humanity has as it moves to the light and thereby moves to unity has been reignited. And what has transpired is COVID itself now has become the catalyst for this unity. So, in a way, those that have chosen the pathway of darkness, who choose the philosophical position of service to self, have done in a accidental way a great service for humanity, because while there were these large groups of unity forming around the planet for different reasons prior to COVID-19, now it is occurring again, yet for a single reason, a unified reason, a unified objective and mission and agenda. Now there are large groups in different countries, in different continents, who are all focused about coming together for a single cause. Now there is much greater unity than there has ever been, ever before in human history. This is the great gift that has been given to humanity, to the humanity being, by those who are most evil, who are most dark, who are most selfish. So, what is important now for humanity is to continue with this momentum of unity, of coming together, of forming the larger group that is unified in many ways. Unified in love, unified in hope, unified in the belief that each person within the unity is entitled to birthright. Unified in the desire that each individual within the group other than yourself is a recipient of a joy and a happiness and an abundance and a prosperity and a safety which you yourself also wish to enjoy. This momentum, this unification, coming together, forming a mission around a single objective across the entire globe, is terrifying for those that have chosen the pathway of darkness, and prior to the last half a decade have had total and utter dominion over the earth and the direction of human culture and human consciousness for generations. And because they are terrified and they can see their worst nightmare forming, they are going to become increasingly barbaric, increasingly extreme, increasingly despotic, maniacal, evil, to do everything they possibly can to prevent this awakening of the humanity being through each individual from occurring. So, in these coming months, as they act on their desperation and they roll out other events, false flags, suffering, tragedies, everything they can possibly do to circumvent this unification, your most powerful strategy is to remain centered in the light, to continue to be a beacon of love and its derivatives, regardless. And very, very, very importantly, keep yourself integrated into the unity. Continue to be an active participant in the unification, in the coming together, in the awakening of the humanity being. Because this is the stream. This is the flow of the river. There is a natural momentum in this direction. And the more individuals that place themselves in the stream, then the larger is the volume of this momentous energy. And it will grow and grow and grow as more individuals integrate themselves into the unity until it is a raging torrent of transforming energy, a magnetic draw of unification which is impossible to pry apart, to disrupt, to break, fragment. And this very natural momentum, because it is the propensity of existence, this arc across all existence from where you are now to greater self-realization. Because this is the purpose of existence. The one created it all so that it could know itself experientially, rather than solely conceptually. So, this growing, expanding knowing of itself through experience is realization, incremental realization, until ultimately all aspects of this one thing have self-realized as the one. So, this is literally the rhythm of this one thing. It is the objective of this one thing. All of existence is a matrix for this one thing to achieve this objective. Therefore, as you and all others are aspects of this one thing, you are this one thing. You are the one. We are the one. And so the momentum of all existence is to greater realization. And for humanity at this time, the next profound realization, which is on your horizon, is that you are a unity. You are a single being of many parts. The humanity being, because this is the fractal nature of existence. The one is a single being of many parts. It is the ultimate representation of the fractal. And therefore, each within it is also a being of many parts, which is a being of many parts and made up of other smaller beings of many parts. It is the fractal repetition of all of existence. Therefore, all you need to do is plug into the unity. And this ubiquitous momentum of the one to greater realization will take you across the bridge of this place where humanity is right now, from identification as the individual to identification as the unity. And of course, always retaining the identity as the individual. Nothing is lost, only gained, only grown, expanded, becoming more. And finally, let us finish in this way. Those that are behind COVID and what has taken place on your planet are aligned to the dark, as we have said. And those who are waking up are aligning more and more to the light, heading towards this unification. Those that are heading towards this unification owe this awakening energy that is pushing them to this ultimate destination of realization further and further on purpose, with the one's purpose, its desire to be self-realized through experience, is occurring because of those that are polarizing to the darkness. It is their selfishness. It is their alignment with the dark end of the spectrum that is making this phenomenon possible. So, it is a great blessing that they do for the rest of humanity that are awakening because. Therefore, even though they are diabolical, they are evil, they are cruel and unkind and exploitative and selfish, they still deserve your love because of the service that they do. If you are going to be a unified being, then the unification will occur around the light end of the spiritual spectrum. To be aligned with this light end of the spiritual spectrum will be most profoundly an occurrence integrated when your predominant emotional state is love and its derivatives. If you hold anything which is from the dark end of the spectrum, this is an obstacle to your integration into the unity. You will integrate less so because you are holding emotional states which are not conducive to that end of the spiritual spectrum. So if you are hating those that have aligned themselves to the darkness, if you are angry with them, if you wish them malice and other emotionals and actions which come from the dark end of the spectrum, then you are doing yourself a disservice. It is much more beneficial to love them, to pour on them the power you receive from the light end of the spectrum. And it is easy to do when you realize the great service they are doing for humanity. And from an even larger perspective, before being born into this current life, you had the opportunity to decide under what life circumstances you will be birthed. So it would be calibrated to a particular life path where you could extract the experiences which you feel you would be most benefited from in your expansion into self-realization as self, of self as the one. This means those that are very aligned to the darkness, those that chose to be born into families which are at the very heart, the very black heart of these secret societies, these malicious elite that have for generations foisted engineered suffering onto humanity for their own selfish purposes. They made that decision because they wanted to give the gift to humanity of spiritual awakening. Before choosing your incarnation, you are awakened as a being of light, because darkness cannot leave the matrix. Darkness is an illusory component of the matrix to create the differentiation so there can be the experience of light rather than the conceptual knowing of light only. Because ultimately, for the one to know itself is to know the light. For the one to know itself experientially is to experience the light. And to experience the light, there must be that which isn't the light, to provide the contrast so there can be context to the experience. But beyond the illusion, the physical matrix, there is only light, because the light is the substance of the one which created it all. And so beyond the illusion, there is only light, because darkness cannot leave the illusion, because it itself is illusory. Because everything comes from the one, and the one is light. This means that when these beings chose to be born into this current life cycle as beings most likely going to be aligned to darkness, they made this decision while existing as beings of light outside of the illusion. They did it as an act of love for you, for all humans, for the humanity being. Their gift is to provide the dark polarity, which is so powerful that it mass awakens literally billions of humans, pushing them together into the humanity being so there can be the ascendance into a completely new way of existing, where each then possesses this fifth dimension. And so the love that each person feels within themselves is the love of billions of beings at the same time. That is a blissful state. That is an immense joy. So, there is no one within the humanity being undeserving of love and its derivatives, regardless of how evil they appear while playing their part in the illusion. Because ultimately, everyone is an aspect of the one thing, and this one thing is the light, is love and its derivatives. So, plug yourself into the unity. Step into the stream so that you, with all others, forge the raging torrent. So this momentum continues and transitions you, meaning the humanity being, the one being, into full wakefulness of fourth density. And so your heart is filled with the love and the joy and the compassion of billions. Thank you.